Joining us live now is an attorney representing Roy Moore, Trenton Garmon. Specifically, he represents the foundation that was founded by Roy Moore, the Foundation for Moral Law. Trenton, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Good to see you, Alan.
I want to ask you,
Stephanie,
with regard to the threats that you made against the Washington Post and the Alabama newspaper group, the Supreme Court has ruled that to win a defamation claim, you've got to provide clear and convincing evidence that the papers knew that the reporting was false before it was published. Is that what you're alleging?
Well, not to dissect per se what I think you're intending to do, because obviously you're trying to communicate here. There is a categorical difference in a public figure and a private individual.
Okay.
So we represent Kayla Moore and the Foundation for Moral Law. So that would be a negligence standard that's slightly different than a public figure. But you are correct as it relates to Roy Moore. Of course, if we were to show malice, a malicious intent in a civil court in front of a jury, which is what we're asking, is for reservation of judgment for each entity, each body, to be allowed to hear the facts from both sides. Even what's been brought up here just recently and some of the reporting that was done there locally leaves out some tidbits. I mean, I was engaged in litigation with the Gadsden Mall. It had a settlement that was confidential. I'm intimately familiar with procedures inside of the Gadsden Mall, and there, from what I have been told, is never been a list with Roy Moore banned from being at the mall. So they processed that out, and they determined, no, whatever it is that someone has said has made them uncomfortable, we don't find it to be worthy to put them on a list. So the things that are out there that are being reported is really just rabbit trails. I'm sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
Is it not cause for concern that there would even be any sort of settlement with the Gadsden Mall? Roy Moore was in his 30s.
No.
What type of settlement would there be?
No, there was not a settlement with Roy Moore. Had nothing to do. Roy Moore has never had a settlement with the Gadsden Mall. I'm talking about my personal experience as a litigator. I have represented people against the Gadsden Mall. So in the case I had against the Gadsden Mall, they have clear policies and procedures how to sort those things out. My family, just last night, we were at a mall watching a movie, and my little 2-year-old girl had a red ball that rolled right in front of a guy. He got up, didn't say anything to me. He left and went out. Thank goodness for Selma, who's one of the workers that was there, and she was watching the whole event. He asked that we leave because of that. So we just chose to get up and leave and made it a peaceful situation. So that's proper process. So my point is this: within the Gadsden Mall, there are policies and procedures if someone feels like, hey, there's some relational tension, and there apparently were reports made, and they said, hey, we don't find it to be worthy to put him on a list. So that is just a thing that's been chased down and turned out to be, according to the deciding body, not an issue. And so what we're saying to voters and what we're saying to people that are rushing to judgment is allow the facts to sort themselves out through hopefully a jury trial eventually. We believe we will get there. But until that point in time,
but you understand
opportunities
like this,
sir, to take and dissect the allegations.
You understand that because of the fact that there's an election 27 days from now, and there are facts emerging, facts that may be contested by Roy Moore and his attorneys, the fact is that changes the timetable a little bit, right? So Sean Hannity has even said he's got to come out and give some explanation other than they're out to get me, it's all fake news.
And in fact, Roy Moore's campaign manager said in the coming days, we're going to see some big holes in the stories some of these accusers have told, and we're interested to know what those holes are.
Well, we can't try the case. There was, back in 1996, a very compelling question that was answered with regards to media. So we can't try the case in front of media. They call that trial by media then. It's probably more trial by social media today. But there is evidence that we can speak to, including, in fact, some work product that I have, a handwriting expert that is going to confirm that this is a forgery.
What's a forgery? The yearbook?
Let's just put that up. This is the note that was produced by the woman who has come forward, Beverly Young Nelson. It says, "To a sweeter and more beautiful girl, I could not say Merry Christmas, love, Roy Moore. DA 122277 Old Hickory House." And you can see the signature on the left side of the screen in the that's in the yearbook, and then that's Roy Moore's signature from official documents on the right side. Roy Moore's alleging that that's a forgery on the left-hand side?
Well, Roy Moore is allowing for the experts to make that opinion. and experts are telling us that, in their opinion, based on the stroke, based on the style, based on the slant of the different text that is there, that that is a forgery. And they also believe from the color pictures that there's a discrepancy as to the shade of the ink. So point is this, we have sent a letter letting them know that we believe it's proper to have some recanting of stories that have been ran, in large part because there are two people that have made allegations, both of which have not had the opportunity to ferret out truth, both of which have had significant holes, even from the minimal opportunity we have had, start to arise in their story, one of which has had their own stepson say, "I don't believe her." So there's an old wisdom statement that says, when times get tense, even the household begins to divide. So the household that are supporting Roy Moore, his people are entrenched, and they're not divided. And he's actually, even today, up 6 points, according to a recent poll. So point of it is, for us as the firm...
You're his attorney. You're not a campaign official. You know, when you mentioned forgery and that yearbook, I wanted to ask about something else. Kayla Moore had been distributing a document that I want to say over 50 pastors had endorsed Roy Moore, and she was showing, you know, how much support he has from the community. Well, we learned that that document that she'd been distributing was back in August, not since these allegations came out, and a few have actually come out since and said we no longer support Roy Moore. So do you want to speak to that?
Speak to the document. Of course, again, you'll have to refer to the campaign for statements with regards to the campaign itself. I represent him, and my firm represents
But you were
him,
just talking
Kayla,
about Roy
and the
Moore being up in the
and
polls.
potential
So which
litigation
is
for
it?
defamation.
Well, you were just talking about
I'm
Roy
sorry,
Moore.
say that part again, Stephanie.
Just a moment ago, you were speaking about Roy Moore being up in the polls. So which is it? You're speaking about the campaign in the polls, or you're just representing him personally as an attorney?
No, I represent him personally as the attorney, and my conversation earlier was that I've known him personally. So I don't speak for the campaign. Actually, tomorrow, from what I understand, there's going to be a press conference.
Well, then why are you talking about the polls,
So you'll have to hear from the
sir?
campaign on it. But you have brought up questions that relates to his support and supporters, and now how it stands as far as his current community and what they look like. And what I'm saying to you is, there locally, yeah, there's a 26-day window, but his supporters are still there. As far as the litigation goes, representing him in that, these fact questions, that's why juries exist, fact disputes. So people that are in an area can come together and can hear both sides presented, just like you're doing here, Stephanie and Allie, in a way that allows for the mind to be open to fact disputes. I call it seasonal and relational tension, and it arises. And this is seasonal tension, and for us as litigators, we're not going to be able to have the chance to try the case before the election. So we're just focusing on gathering the evidence.
Right.
Part of my letter included a preservation notice to ask, and I've got a firm that have worked with in the past up in New York that is willing and available to secure and to prevent any kind of spoliation of that yearbook and other evidence that's out there.
Let me ask you this.
That's been our intent.
I understand, and we understand and respect that you can't rush the trial of facts because of an election, but we do have a different circumstance here in that the people of Alabama are going to pass some judgment in 27 days. Let me just ask you, when you say that it is the job of the courts and juries to try the facts, let me put forward what Beverly Young Nelson said on Monday that I thought was key to her allegation. Let's listen to it together.
I thought that he was going to rape me. I was twisting, and I was struggling, and I was begging him to stop. I had tears running down my face. At some point, he gave up. And he then looked at me and he told me, he said, "You're just a child." And he said, "I am the district attorney of Etowah County, and if you tell anyone about this, no one will ever believe you."
So I guess, Trenton, the issue is that's the type of thing that a court could hear, although it's not really clear under what circumstances they would hear that, because this is outside of any statute of limitations. So what are the people of Alabama, absent a court case, supposed to make of that? What do you make of it?
Sure. That's a great question. And it's very difficult because when these types of allegations arise, which don't only affect her as a woman, because obviously a person's sexuality, their sexual liberty is an extremely important right. I mean, it's protected by the Constitution. But it also affects Kayla Moore, the wife of Judge Moore, his daughters, and also his grandchildren, to include females. So I get all of that. I've been a part of some pretty hot-button litigation and have seen people like that weep on stand. Had 4 witnesses in a case in North Alabama that we ended up prevailing at trial. They marched 4 people through that accused my client. We put 4 just for the sake of numbers that were also eyewitnesses that had fundamentally different testimony, and the other side had disclosed a video, but they had failed to find it in the discovery, and I played a video which took the testimony of those 4 false witnesses totally out from under them.
Are you saying that you think that this woman is a false witness? You think her testimony is made up?
I will say that I'm reserving judgment based on what I have seen, the facts that are out there now. There's questions. Daryl Nelson, who is her stepson, has said he does not believe her. And there are some issues about some mental health that we've not had the opportunity to get into, but I will say this. When someone breaks a law, there should be consequences. So it's a both and. If someone breaks a law and sexually molests someone, there should be consequences. If someone breaks a law and is misrepresenting something, they're perjuring someone, or they're bringing a false accusation,
Trenton,
there should be consequences. But Judge Moore...
It is so
Judge
difficult.
Moore at this point's denied it, and I believe him.
It is so difficult when only one side is heard. So please know Roy Moore is welcome to join Allie on TV today, tomorrow, any day this week. But we should also share some of what Roy Moore did say to Sean Hannity the other night, because he does deserve to have his voice heard. Take a listen.
Would it be unusual for you as a 32-year-old guy to have dated a woman as young as 17? That would be a, 15-year difference, or a girl 18. Do you remember dating girls that young at that time?
Not generally, no. If I did, I'm not going to dispute anything, but I don't remember anything like that.
But you don't specifically remember having any girlfriend that was in her late teens even at that time?
No, I don't remember that, and I don't remember ever dating any girl without the permission of her mother.
Okay, so if Roy Moore doesn't remember, how could he say that it's definitively false? And number 2, why would he need permission from any of these girls' mothers if they weren't underage?
Sure, that's a good question. And culturally speaking, obviously there's differences. I looked up Allie's background there. Wow, that's awesome that you have got such a diverse background. It's really cool to read through that. But point is this:
what does Allie's
each culture
background
has
have to do with dating a 14-year-old?
I'm not finished with the context of it.
Well, please answer. What does Allie Velshey's background have to do with dating children, 14-year-old girls?
Sure. In other countries, there's arrangement through parents for what we would refer to as consensual marriage. So
Allie's from Canada.
I understand that. And Allie's also spent time in other countries, of which I've gone to. So it's not a bad thing.
I don't know where you're going with this, Trenton.
Stephanie, to answer, but here's to answer your question. So he said no, comma. So he answered no. And then he went on to say his process would be, before he date anybody, whether they're 25, 35, or whether he doesn't know their age, he would ask the mother's permission. So he actually answered no. There's no inconsistency in that. And I stand by the answer. To me, it's the most appropriate, proper answer. When I begin to court my wife.
I have not spent time in Alabama, and that is your community. You have young daughters.
Sure.
If your daughter was 14, would you think it's appropriate that she date a man in his 30s? Would you think it was normal that a random man sign her yearbook?
I would say no. If someone came to me like what was postulated there and said, may I date your daughter, don't know her age, I would say no. Just like my wife and I, we initially, when we courted, did not know each other's age. I was 29 at the time, and she was 21, and she thought I was 40. I guess my hair has fallen out a little more than I would like to acknowledge when I look in the mirror. But point is this, I wasn't sure how old she was, and he laid out a very clear, culturally acceptable process to get permission of a parent. Sometimes you ask the age as you're courting. Sometimes you wait until you talk to a parent. But
a lot of
he said no, so
at
that
the
was
age
his
of
answer.
14 haven't even hit puberty. So there's a very big difference between 14 and 15 and 25 and 35. 14 years
Sure.
old, that's a child.
I understand what you're saying. The point is this: his answer was no, and his answer was anytime he would go to date someone, he would get permission of the mother.
So the
I
answer
agree, a 14-year-old
isn't no.
is definitely a child.
It was not
a 14-year-old
usually.
is a child.
The answer wasn't no. It's not usually. And even if it's one, one's too many.
A 14-year-old is a child, and even if it was one, one is too many. You're right.
So you say that you have that there's no better man than Roy Moore. You've said that. You still stand by that comment?
From who I know in Roy Moore, I know no better man. I know a lot of good men, a lot of good women, but from who I know in Roy Moore, I know no better man.
And what do you think of the fact that there have been calls from top national Republicans for Roy Moore to drop out of the state? Do you think that matters? There are a whole lot of people who are listening to these women, and they believe them.
Sure. I think you have to talk to the campaign about that again as far as like political figures. I will say as far as a lawsuit goes, anyone that were to rush to that type of judgment has to be cautious because it opens themselves up to others rushing to judgment when they're in seasonal and relational tension as well. But I'm not speaking on behalf of the campaign. As far as a lawsuit goes, that has no effect on how it would be litigated, how it would be presented to a jury. But I hope that answers your question.
All right, real quick then, granted you're not going to talk about the campaign. First, when was the last time you spoke to Roy Moore?
Day before yesterday, we text back and forth. His wife and I did today. And I spoke with his wife yesterday, and I think I spoke to Roy yesterday as well.
And I know you don't represent his campaign, but given that you know Roy Moore and obviously his wife, do you believe he's going to drop out or stay in?
Roy's, I believe, going to stay in because he has denied it, and that's the proper thing to do. If, in fact, this did not happen, which, again, there are processes even before the election to test out that they could go through if they really believe it happened. But I think the evidence is going to indicate that the weight of it shows that it did not. Yet we've not got that opportunity yet through litigation. But I do not think he's going to drop out. And if, in fact, these things are not true, the most appropriate thing for him to do would be to push forward. It's a time of seasonal tension. And Roy is a very salty guy, if you will. And he is not going to simply cower to political pressure, which is what makes him so electric.
When you say, just so I understand what you mean, when you say seasonal tension, you're saying it's in the ether right now, the political polarization out there, and that this may not be fact-based accusation, but it's political? Is that what you mean when you say seasonal tension?
I'm saying that obviously as elections approach, it's like when you get into the red zone in a football game. We've got Jersey Day coming up here down in Florida at several of the local churches because Florida State is going to be playing here soon. Well, they get in the red zone, they get pretty serious about each yard. So as you begin to approach Election Day, things get very intense. To the extent now that I understand it's amazing that the times we live in allows for this kind of a technology. But robocalls are now even being made asking for people to come forward against Roy, which I think is kind of an indication of the political climate that we're in. And we plan on even probably getting into some depositions related to that.
I'm sorry, what robocall are you speaking of? And are you sure that robocall you're speaking of is a fact and is true?
There's been stories reported on it.
Yes, and I'm asking you, are those stories you're speaking about, seeing that you're a lawyer and following the letter of the law is so important to you, these robocalls that you're speaking of that you believe were put in place by the opposition looking for accusers to come forward, that's a fact? That's happened? Please tell us about it.
Well, I don't know who they were put in place by.
Then we should. Then if you don't, since we do care about the facts, let's put that beside us.
Well, you brought up the political climate, so it doesn't matter who it's been put in place by. You were asking as it relates to the political climate.
And I believe you're talking about a robocall that's not true.
Okay, I'm basing this on reports that I've seen. Y'all do a great job just like other reporters, so I'm not sure how that'll feather out as far as if, in fact, there were legit robocalls, but someone found it objectively ethical to report that there were robocalls, and there's reports out there on credible sites. So I understand the intent of your question, but the point is, as far as the litigation goes, we are plowing forward. We'll be looking at the evidence, taking depositions. There's been cases just like this in which falsely portraying people is, of course, something that is a tortious conduct. And so depositions allow for us to have the opportunity to present this evidence that will be under oath to a jury, and we're looking forward to that opportunity, and that's our plan, whether it's people in news organizations and newspapers. You know, we plan on turning every stone over and making sure that we shine the light in every foxhole.
And you should. Discovery on all sides.
Trenton Garmon, thanks for joining us. Trenton Garmon is an attorney representing Alabama Republican Senate nominee Roy Moore's foundation. Thank you, Trenton.
It was such an honor to be on here. Y'all did a great job. I appreciate the dialogue.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.